Welcome back. Our dramatic reading of His Majesty's Dragon by Naomi Novik continues. Nick here. You read these books. If you want to subscribe, you'll get instant alerts as we go for each chapter of every book that I read until it's finished. And then we keep going with other books that you folks recommend. Let's pick back up because where we just left off, Lawrence and Temeraire were taking off to go with the first dragons of the Flying Corps that they've met to go meet their destiny and go find out where they're going to get assigned and what it's like to be part of the Aerial Corps. Aerial Command was situated in the countryside just southeast of Chatham, close enough to London to permit daily consultation with the Admiralty and the War Office. It had been an easy hour's flight from Dover, with the rolling green fields he knew so well out below like a checkerboard, and London a suggestion of towers in the distance, purple and indistinct. So remember, they were originally down in Portugal. They said that they were going to get on a large dragon transport that is going to take them up to England and Great Britain, and apparently that has happened. Although the dispatches had long preceded him to England, and he must have expected, Lawrence was not called to the office until the next morning. Even then, he was kept waiting outside Admiral Powey's office for nearly 2 hours. At last, the door opened. Stepping inside, he could not help glancing curiously from Admiral Powey's to Admiral Bowden, who was sitting there to the right of the desk. The precise words had not been intelligible out in the hall, but he could not have avoided overhearing the loud voices, and Bowden was still red-faced and frowning. "Yes, Captain Lawrence, do come in," Powey said, waving him in with a fat-fingered hand. "How splendid Temeraire looks! I saw him eating this morning. Already close on 9 tons, I should say. You are to be most highly commended. And you fed him solely on fish the first 2 weeks? And also while on transport? Remarkable, remarkable indeed. We must consider amending the general diet." Yes, this is beside the point," Bowden said impatiently. Powys frowned at Bowden, then continued perhaps a little too heartily. "In any case, he's certainly ready to begin training, and of course we must do our best to bring you up to the mark as well. Of course we've confirmed you in your rank. As a handler, you would be made captain anyway, but you will have a great deal to do. 10 years' training is not to be made up in a day." Lawrence bowed. "Sir, Temeraire and I are both at your service," he said, but with reserve. He perceived in both men the same odd constraint about his training that Portland had displayed. Many possible explanations for that constraint had occurred to Lawrence during the 2 weeks aboard the transport. There it is. Most of them unpleasant, the 2 weeks aboard the transport. A boy of 7, taken from his home before his character had been truly formed, might easily be forced to accept treatment which a grown man would never endure. And yet, of course, the aviators themselves would consider it necessary, having gone through it themselves. Lawrence could think of no other cause that would make them all so evasive about the subject. His heart sank further as Powys said, "Now then, we must send you to Loch Laggan, for it was the place Portland had mentioned, and been so anxious about. There's no denying that it is the best place for you," Powys went on. "We cannot waste a moment in making you ready for duty, and I would not be surprised if Temeraire were up to heavy combat weight by the end of the summer." "Sir, I beg your pardon, but I have never heard of this place, and I gather it is in Scotland?" Lawrence asked. He hoped to draw Powys out. "Yes, in Inverness-shire. It is one of our largest coverts, and certainly the best for intensive training," Powys said. "Lieutenant Green outside will show you the way, and mark a covert along the route for you to spend the night. I'm sure you'll have no difficulty in reaching the place." It was clearly a dismissal, and Lawrence knew he could not make any further inquiry. In any event, he had a more pressing request. "I will speak to him then, sir," he said. "But if you have no objection, I would be glad to stop the night at my family home in Nottinghamshire. There is room enough for Temeraire, and deer for him to eat." His parents would be in town at this time of year, but the Galmans often stayed in the country. That must be his last name, Galmans. Galmans stayed in the country, and there might be some chance of oh no, that's the woman that he wanted to be betrothed to, that until this massive change of having to become, a partner for this dragon, this amazing dragon. He was thinking of, there was some kind of an unspoken or slightly spoken understanding, casually spoken understanding, that him and Edith Gallman were going to get engaged. So there he might have a chance of seeing Edith, if only briefly. "Oh, certainly, by all means," Powie said. "I'm sorry I cannot give you further furlough. You have certainly deserved it, but I do not think we can spare the time. A week might make all the difference in the world." "Thank you, sir. I perfectly understand," Lawrence said, and so bowed and departed. Armed by Lieutenant Green with an excellent map showing the route, Lawrence began his preparations at once. He had taken some time in Dover to acquire a collection of light bandboxes. He thought that their cylindrical shape might better lie against Temeraire's body, and now he transferred his belongings into them. And he knew he had made an unusual sight, carrying a dozen boxes more suitable for ladies' hats out to Temeraire. But when he had strapped them down against Temeraire's belly and seen how little they added to his profile, he could not help feeling somewhat smug. See, he already sees, I think I could improve a few things around here with my alternate sort of thinking and not just always following what was handed to me. As he said, most of these aviators and who all join the Corps and move up in the Corps started at 7 before they even had their own opinions, had their own any other perspectives, and were basically taught this is how we do things around here. So you could imagine a whole corps of military people who were raised that way would just simply stick with perhaps the status quo. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't be a good fit for the service. So Lawrence coming in, being forced in from the side as a full-grown adult with a whole tradition of being in the Navy and the thinking that that type of post might engender, to say nothing of his own unique perspectives and opinions that he brings as an adult outsider in general to being an aviator, not just coming from the tradition of being an aviator, has got to lead to some new, interesting ideas, and I think Lawrence is catching on to that. He knows there's a lot he doesn't know, but he thinks there's some things I might know and be willing to try that even you guys, the veterans who've been here forever, you don't even know. "They are quite comfortable. I do not notice them at all," Temeraire assured him, rearing up on his back legs and flapping to make certain they were well seated, just as Latificat had done back in Madeira. "Can we not get one of those tents? It would be much more comfortable for you to ride out of the wind." "I have no idea how to put it up, though, my dear," Lawrence said, smiling at the concern. "But I will do well enough. With this leather coat they've given me, I will be quite warm." Oh, excuse me. I should normally turn that off. It must wait until you have your proper harness, in any case. The tents require locking carabiners. Nearly ready to go, then? Oh, this is from somebody else. It must wait until you have your proper harness, in any case. The tents require locking carabiners. Nearly ready to go, then, Lawrence? Bowden had come upon them and interjected himself into the conversation. That's why it threw me. Without any notice. He joined Lawrence standing before Temeraire's chest and stooped a little to examine the bandboxes. I see you are bent on turning all our customs upside down to suit yourself." "No, sir, I hope not," Lawrence said, keeping his temper. It could not serve to alienate the man, for he was one of the senior commanders of the Corps, and might well have a say in what postings Temeraire received. "But my sea chest was awkward for him to bear, and these seemed the best replacement I could manage on short notice." "They may do," Bowden said, straightening up. "I hope you have an easy time putting aside the rest of your naval thinking as your sea chest, Lawrence. You must be an aviator now." "I am an aviator, sir, and willingly so," Lawrence said. "But I cannot pretend that I intend to put aside the habits and mode of thinking formed over a lifetime. Whether I intended it or no, I doubt it would even be possible." Bowden fortunately took this without anger, but he shook his head. "No, it would not. And so I told. Well, I've come to make something clear. You will oblige me by refraining from discussing, with those not in the Corps, any aspects of your training. His Majesty sees fit to give us our heads to achieve the best performance of our duty. We do not care to entertain the opinions of outsiders. Do I make myself clear?" "Perfectly," Lawrence said grimly. The peculiar command bore out all of his worst suspicions. But if none of them would come out and make themselves plain, he could hardly make an objection. It was infuriating. "Sir," he said, making up his mind to try again to draw out the truth, "if you would be so good as to tell me what makes the covert in Scotland more suitable than this for my training, I would be grateful to know what to expect. You've been ordered to go there. That makes it the only suitable place, Bowden said sharply. Yet then he seemed to relent, for he added in a less harsh tone, Lagan's training master is especially adept at bringing inexperienced handlers along quickly. Inexperienced? Lawrence said blankly. I thought an aviator had to come into the service at the age of 7. Surely you do not mean that there are boys already handling dragons at that age? No, of course not, Bowden said. But you are not the first handler to come from outside the ranks, or without as much training as we might care for. Occasionally a hatchling will have a fit of distemper. We must take anyone we can get to accept it. He gave a sudden snorting laugh. Dragons are strange creatures, and there's no understanding them. Some of them even take a liking to sea officers. He slapped Temeraire's side and left as abruptly as he had come, without a word of parting, but in apparently good humor, and leaving Lawrence hardly less perplexed than before. There's going to be a scene change right here to their flight to Nottinghamshire, and I'm sorry I only have this time to get this brief session in, but once again, giving you little tastes here, and hopefully you won't mind me stealing a few little times to read to you and keep you posted throughout these weeks when I have the time. All right, so subscribe, like I said, to get instant updates, and hopefully I'll have another snippet of this chapter coming for you very soon. Thanks for watching and reading with me.